All right, we are live on Facebook. Good evening,
Excellent.
Greg. How you doing?
I'm good, David. I'm good. It's been a little while, right, that we've been doing this, and we wanted to do this recap, and just like we always do, we wanted to do it right. We wanted to do it awesome. We wanted to bring a great guest in. So I'm happy that we're back at it. We will be back at it on a monthly basis moving forward. So for those of you that have been watching us regularly and kind of haven't seen us in a couple of months, understand that we will be on. We are going to continue informing the community, and we're going to continue bringing the pertinent
Absolutely.
conversations. Looks like I'm lagging
No, you're okay.
on
That's
you.
great. Yeah,
Okay. So without further ado, we'll start this. We have a couple of things that we'll be doing today, right? We have an amazing guest lined up. Some of you know who he is. Some of you will just come to know him right now. He's an amazing diasporan. And then the second part is going to be David and I prepared like a recap of 2021, a great way for people to catch up on what happened, to inform what happened, to understand where we are as an Armenian nation, as Armenia, and most importantly, as Artsakh and Syunik. Those are hand in hand. So that's, without further ado, I want to introduce our, the guest of honor, Amanda, uh, transplanted himself to Martuni in Artsakh and is currently a diaspora living there. Someone kind of from LA, someone that I've been following for a while. I've been listening to a lot of pertinent conversation with this gentleman, and understanding that there's nothing more powerful than hearing right from the ground what is happening, because it's unfiltered and it's from the person's mouth. So I want to welcome to Arach Media, Shant Charshafjian, or as he goes on a lot of the Instagram and Facebook, as Char Chaf. Welcome, man.
welcome.
Pleasure being with you guys. Thank you. I appreciate it, Greg and David. Thank you very much. I'm humbled by the kind words. I don't think I'm that amazing of a person, but thank you guys. Pleasure to be with you.
Thank you. And Greg, you probably mentioned it, but Shant is joining us live from Artsakh right now. Shant, why don't you tell everyone where you're actually joining us from right now?
I'm in the city of Martuni, which is in the region of Martuni, in the Republic of Artsakh. Martuni now, since Hatrut is currently occupied and Charagan is currently occupied by Azerbaijan, Martuni would be the southeasternmost region of Artsakh that we have now. It's very close to the Amaras Vank, which is the first school that Mesrop Mastots started teaching Armenian at in the area of Artsakh. There's a few more historical places here of significance, but live from Martuni.
Excellent. Amazing. Thank you. I mean, this is, Stepanak is as far as we've gone many a times. Martuni's like really out there. Right off the bat, how did you find yourself? I know there's a story that led you to today, to where you are. Just give us a quick background on how you found yourself from LA, I believe, right, where you hail from, to Martuni in a snapshot, so folks out there know.
Sure. I guess really quick. The last time that I had come to Armenia prior to last year in September when I came, it was with my graduating class from LA, from Kilipos. I went to Armenian school in LA, and since then, I always had it in my heart, that I wanted to be here, I wanted to work here, I wanted to help, improve my country and whatnot. But it had always been put off. You make plans, and the years roll by. And then when COVID hit, I had actually finally planned to come on vacation, but COVID hit, and all the planes were, they were down. There was no flights, everything like that. And finally, when flights reopened in September, I came out for a vacation. Ironically, I had bought my ticket one way because wherever I worked in LA was still closed. So I said, I'll just spend some time here until work opens up again. And 10, 13, 14 days later, the war started. And I just tried to help in whatever way I could. And, you know, the war ended. We all know how it ended. I mean, people like to say it ended. I find that term incorrect because the war hasn't ended for us. You know,
Right.
there's a full scale war, and then there's another war to depopulate us off our land through intimidation and through one-off killings and kidnappings. It's unfortunately, I want to use this example. I mean, like yesterday, we had gone to a village to pass out toys for the kids. That village literally is at the base of a hill. And on top of that hill, there's Azeri posts. And, you know, if you zoom in or you use a binocular or you use your camera and you zoom in, you can literally see the guys. You can see their faces and everything like that. And there's a lot of kids that live there. There's about 40 kids that live in that village and the next door village. And in that village, it's happened that a guy is a shepherd and he gets kidnapped by the Azeris. Now, the result is, even if we get that guy back, that's going to result in like another 10 people saying that, hey, you know what? It's not safe to live here. I have to leave. My life, my safety isn't protected. Or other people living elsewhere saying that, hey, look what happened. So it's not always through tanks and bombs and drones that they're going to try to annihilate us and, you know, erase us out of Artsakh and Armenia, out of our historical lands. So there's major issues here. And unfortunately, you know, safety and security should be number one for Armenia and Artsakh. And Armenia's role was basically the security and safety guarantor of Artsakh. But hearing the Prime Minister's speech last week, he basically washed his hands from Artsakh and said that, you know, the fate of Artsakh is not decided by Artsakhis. The fate of Artsakh is decided through the Azerbaijani constitution or Azerbaijan or whatnot. And that's just completely wrong. And that's completely wrong as an American because we believe in self-determination. And it's just crazy, you know, it's the people over here are no different than the people at Concord and Lexington a couple hundred years back. Okay, they decided that they wanted to be independent, that they have the right to self-determination. They followed all the rules and constitutional procedures that were inscribed in the Soviet Union's constitution, and they voted. They gained their independence, and a war broke out. And people seem to forget that one of the reasons that we remember 1915 and the genocide is so that we don't forget the lessons of the genocide. It's not just because of, you know, we want reparations and restitution and our lands in Western Armenia. It's because if we forgot about those lessons in 1988, whenever they started killing Armenians in Baku and in Sumday, we wouldn't have reacted the same way. We would have said, oh, you know, that's some far off place and it doesn't matter. And maybe those guys were bad Armenians. But it seems right now that we have a generation that has forgotten those lessons and is just being like, well, you know what? I don't live in Artsakh. I live in Yerevan, or I live in Glendale, or I live in San Francisco, you know? And maybe that area is not that important to us, or on some obscure map, it belongs to some other country. But we have to remember that whether it belongs to this country or that country, there's Armenians living there. There's your brothers and sisters living there. And the people in question, the Azeris and the Turks, they don't believe in coexistence, no matter how much they preach that. And we have to remember that. We have to remember that.
That's an important point to make. And I just shared a screen with from your Facebook. It's a photo of you showing the village, and on the highlands there's the posts of the Azeris. Just for those of you that are curious to see how close the enemy is. And by the way, these are the residents that those Azeri snipers are viewing. You know what I mean? These are the kids in that village. So. I totally agree with what you're saying. I understand the situation, and I would hope that the nation kind of wakes up to the call of trying to kind of come back to the way it was. And the way it was in the 80s and early 90s is that everybody was galvanized around the Artsakh movement, and you know we want to make sure that that continues because there are Armenians in Artsakh, and Artsakh is Armenian. But to kind of
Sean, thank you for breaking that down and sharing that context from being there and for kind of waking everyone up, I hope, that's watching and going to listen and watch. just to the reality that's there and the importance to these lands. Thank you for that. And that's one of the reasons we're here right now. One of the reasons, and one of the main reasons you're our guest right now. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Actually, the first time I saw your show was when you guys had Razmig on from, I forget the name of the group, but I want to say Artsakh Aid Mission. And
Razmig Makashyan?
Yeah, Razmig Makashyan, yeah.
Yeah, he was last in November, our last guest. He's great. Yeah, good friend.
Yeah.
Yes, go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to
he's a great guy, and he's just like another example of somebody from the diaspora that answered the call, and came and tried to help in whatever way he could. And one of the things I want to tell people is that I'm not like an expert in anything. I'm not a biologist. I'm not an engineer. I'm not a chemist. But you come here and you see the problems firsthand. And every person has a different background, and you could find a different way to help. And that's what's always important. And the most critical thing is that we don't know what's wrong. Honestly, we don't know what's wrong here. And Razmig is a cousin to Rafi. Rafi that was here a few months ago. He stayed here for 6 months. Rafi is a dentist. Mm-hmm. Now, just an example. He came here as a dentist. He volunteered as a dentist. And Rafi found an issue, which is that we don't have in the States, which is that they don't add fluoride to the water. Now, I'm not going to get into an argument whether fluoride is good or fluoride is bad, but it's basically something that being here, you don't like. I had no clue about that. And he said, yeah, man, that's why, like in the States, we don't have cavities like these kids do, because these kids don't have fluoride. Now, I'm not a dentist. I don't know, but everybody could find their own little field and their own little problem. And if they help addressing that, we'll put brick upon brick, and we'll build a country, but you need to come see the problems firsthand sometimes, just to even know that there is a problem.
So I take that as a call to action for all those Armenians that really want to come to Artsakh, but they should. I'm going to take a little bit of a step back from your journey to today, from the first time you got there, kind of dive into that dark part in our history that's still ongoing, which is a slow-moving war. But I want to kind of step back to the 44 days of war. A lot of us seem to, from a distance, and even as close as Yerevan, you know what I mean? Like the level of swiftness of what happened in those days, and the way that the information started flying at us. I have a picture of what happened, but again, I want to understand in your words, how did you see the war unfold? What were some discrepancies that you noticed during the war? Because I'm most certainly coming from 1,000 miles away, seeing a lot of holes that I really would like somebody to fill for me. And we won't get into a debate of what I think happened, right? But in reality, I just want to kind of hear from your voice, what kind of, in your opinion, I have a lot to cover, but what unfolded, how you saw it happen, and what were some issues there where you saw it and you're like, wow, this ain't right. This ain't right. Not just because Azeris are attacking us, just, that doesn't look good right now,
Yeah. It's the first issues that were kind of concerning to me were these mass evacuations that they were having in places that the war hadn't actually got to yet. And they were moving the people out. And I could link that to how we actually still have Martuni, because in the first war, the residents of Martuni, although some wanted to leave, they weren't allowed to leave by the commanders, because they told them that if the families leave and the kids leave, then the soldier does not know what he's fighting for. The soldier has to know that he's fighting for those families and those kids. And we all have to stay and we have to keep this land. That's kind of how they kept this land in the 90s. And it's with that same feelings and emotions and well, the word, I'm missing the word, but it's that, those lessons that kept the people here during this war. And in this city, the people were told, leave, or if you're gonna go dig a trench in a certain position. And they told them that if we go protect there and we dig a trench there, that's behind the city already. That's behind this hill. We'll already have lost You know, the city. What's the point of digging a trench over there? And it's one of the few places that the Aussies and Turks came, and like a kilometer behind me, you know, they came over that hill and they actually got pushed back. But the first sign that there was major concern between, let's say, like the war propaganda and the messaging that was going on and the reality was that, you know, they're doing a call that says, you know, like a call to arms, everybody go to war or something like that. But the people that they call it mobilization, you know, like people that have been a soldier and they're kind of like a reservist, those people were on standby. They're not getting called. No one's getting sent out. And then instead of sending regular army units, encouraging volunteer groups to go. And unfortunately, I mean, my take on that is that it's a bit more of a sinister idea, because people who are going to volunteer to go to war, they have a heartfelt concern and this nationalistic love for the country. And we wanted to get rid of that generation. We wanted to send those guys over there and let them be the first casualties, so that whatever globalist agendas we have, we can get that by. I mean, that's a sinister way to look at it. But the last week of the war, whenever the Shushi battles hadn't started yet, 2 days prior to that, I had come back to Armenia to get supplies, and I had 3 volunteers that I was going to bring back with me. And we were in the car, and we got to Goris, and Goris is the gateway to the Pertsor corridor. Unfortunately, people use Lachin, the word Lachin a lot, but they should use Pertsor. But you go from Goris to Artsakh using that road. The road was closed from Goris to get into Artsakh for 1 day, second day. The end of the second day, we heard that, oh, there's battles and they're getting close to Shushi. And it was like, okay, let's go, let us go. And in Goris, no joke, no exaggeration, there were regular army units and volunteers in the thousands, over 5,000, I could comfortably say. None of them were being allowed in, not even the Skoros, the ambulances. There was a ton of ambulances not being allowed in, and munitions trucks, and anybody could tell you this, but we had a hope, you know, we were kind of optimistic, and we spoke amongst each other, and we said, you know what, we've pulled back and withdrawn so much that we've let the enemy overextend themselves, and now they're in our mountainous territory, and they don't want us to be, you know, collateral damage. So they're asking all of us to sit here, and now we're finally going to bomb the hell out of them, you know? But that never happened. That never happened. It's just all of a sudden, hey guys, we've signed a signature and the war is over. So if we were really trying to fight to protect our homeland at all costs, that didn't happen. And unfortunately, we all kind of know this, you know, that we're like if we get cornered, that's when we actually straighten our spine and we really, really care and we help and we fight. You know, we kind of wait until, you know, that last moment. And it seemed like it had gotten there. And in the diaspora and in the country, it was like everybody was ready at all costs. And right then they broke the hopes of the people with this signature. When you ask about, I mean, a lot of the things that, if I get into like the side stories, it'll be kind of like he said, she said stuff. So I don't want to get into that. I'll just get into that part. That was my experience.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. That actually, you know, on a, you know, from a bird's eye view, definitely explains a lot, connects some of the dots. And, you know, as a lot of close people to me say, there will be a time when we will get into those detailed stories, and those stories will definitely start propelling and hopefully galvanizing the nation to start the next response, which is, you know, protecting Syunik and Artsakh, which is what we should be doing now. That being said, just want to kind of slowly transition into, you know, the life since the capitulation, right? Since that horrible November, what do you call it, the signature that was thrown on the people, and especially the people of Artsakh. How did you find your life past that? What are you doing? What has been, because there's, you know, I've followed you, I've seen what you do. You do a lot of grassroots things. Recently, I've been seeing you've been posting a lot about what has been, you know, fundraising, what has been delivered, and what are you trying to achieve with that? What's going on? Let us know.
after the capitulation signature, we were all kind of lost. Obviously, all of us, we had that major depression, but there were families in need, families that had been displaced, and people had been sending funds for me to buy all sorts of gear for the people going to the front. So that wasn't taking place anymore. So the funds started going to families that were displaced, families that lost a loved one. And a lot of like painful encounters happened where I went to a house and visited, a young wife with 2 kids. And I saw the picture and I'm like, damn, I've given this guy like a jacket or a flashlight or a walkie-talkie. And this guy left these 2 little kids. He's not even an Artsakh. He lives in Yerevan, I didn't even know that. And, we went from there and eventually I got to come back to Artsakh and we visited a lot of the villages and the families here that lost a loved one. And when I got to see that, hey, you know what, there's an entire generation that we lost, obviously, these soldiers during this war, but there's an entire generation of kids that are, under 8 years old, 5 years old, newborns. There were pregnant mothers that, the husband gave their life in the war. And these people live here and these people have needs. And we have to do whatever we can so that those losses weren't in vain, so that they didn't just fight to protect whatever we have now and us on our own free will or through our laziness or our lack of caring to develop this country. We just end up, deserting those families and having them move to Russia or whatnot. So we started working. Obviously, the loss of land in the country is significant. But one thing that people don't focus on, which I know there's a lot of intelligent people watching. If they look at water resources and they look at how water resources, what we have lost right now, it's tremendous. Artsakh used to export energy to Armenia. They had around 33 or 34 hydroelectric stations. We lost 31 of those 34 or 30 of those 33. As far as rivers and waters, you guys saw during the summer about how Stepanakert was cut off from water for 6 weeks or 7 weeks, like a ridiculous period of time.
Yeah.
The village I went to yesterday, actually the day before yesterday, Yemishchan and Pertashen. Yemishchan is a small village, about 50 families. Pertashen has around 160 families. It's pretty big. And they have around 250 kids that I'm going to visit this week. They get water once a week for 6 to 8 hours, 4 to 8 hours, but let's just call it 6, once a week. And this has been since the war. This isn't just like a month. It's been a year and a month already. So there's problems that people face. There's a lot of problems that they face. And unfortunately, our focus as a nation, as a government, isn't there, isn't there to help. But I try to do my part with small things, such as like building a greenhouse, with drip irrigation, so that they could use less water resources and they could combat like that loss of arable land so that they produce more off a smaller space. So that's just like one thing that we're doing. But there's a lot of work focused on the kids. Basically, I started a foundation over here. It's called Lori Humanitarian Fund. But there's kids that we started a wrestling program for them in 4 different villages. We raised funds for that to get the material, the clothes, and the gear. And we got jobs for people because we're paying the coaches as well in 3 of the villages. 1 of the villages we are not. So that's one thing. They need culture. We tried providing musical instruments a few places. Right now, during this holiday season, we're passing out presents. But the second greenhouse is being built. That one was actually made possible through a small grant that through the Birthright Foundation. They give out awards at the year's end, and a few people that won the Valor Award, they decided to send that to the programs that I'm working on. So I want to thank them and the Birthright program for making that possible. And Birthright's an amazing program that brings diasporans or Armenians living outside of Armenia to the homeland so that they could volunteer in different fields. They get a immersion. It's like an immersion course into the country. They could live with a family, or they could live on their own. It's better to get information about them from them, but all I know is good things about them. What can I say? I mean, you guys ask away, and I'll answer.
Yeah,
No, absolutely.
that's amazing. That's amazing work, Shant. That's absolutely amazing work that what you're doing. Before we wrap in a little bit, like we definitely want to know how we can help amplify your foundation and the work you're doing. So we'll get there, but I just want to make sure that we're able to do that. Go ahead, Greg. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, a segue into what you mentioned, right? You mentioned that, and again, guys, if I'm lagging, it's my internet. You said that, you know, there are the diasporans that can come and have an immersion. We have the idea here that the access to Artsakh is becoming limited. Is that so? And I know that there's ways of getting from diaspora to Artsakh. Have you also seen a very, very big decrease in diasporans coming to Artsakh since the capitulation in November of last year?
Unfortunately, yes. The number of diasporans here and the number of them basically even just coming and going, there's been a major decrease. Yes, getting into Artsakh has become more difficult, but also where there's a will, there's a way. So if you really want to get in and you try and there's other ways, people will help you. I'll try to help you. I don't want to promise anything, but we're working on that every day. And whenever I talk to anybody in the government, I tell them, hey, look, you're telling me I'm doing a good job or whatnot. Well, why aren't you helping this other guy get here and do a good job? Okay. Don't tell me I'm doing a good job. I'm not going to take a picture with you. I don't want a photo. I don't want an award. I don't want any of that. Help people get here. You know, cut the BS. Okay. But you can, and even if, I mean, let's say, okay, there's Artsakh, right? Syunik, Megri, Davush region. It's all our country. It's all Armenia for me. You know, so find a place, find the field, find something you want to do. You want to work with little kids. You want to work in education. You want to start bringing like STEM labs to classes. I don't know what you want to do, but any of these things will help. And simply just trying to encourage even like businesses in Armenia or people to develop their own business so that they have ways that they can provide for themselves. One of the things we have to keep in mind, whatever you do, don't turn this into like a welfare state, okay? Because they don't want that either. They don't want it either. Trust me. They tell me, they say, Shant, don't just go give money to people. You know, the first month after the war, people needed that. But create work, create jobs, create programs.
Yeah, well said. Well said.
That you answered a couple of other existing questions that I had. What does Artsakh need today? I mean, there's a lot that we need, but obviously it's the connection between diaspora and Artsakh, right? It's more diasporans kind of paying attention and supporting Artsakh. One thing that I'm noticing is that we in the diaspora need to elevate, and I think I'm starting to like jump in as an interviewee here, but I just have my opinion as well, and you can echo it. I think the idea of Artsakh is slowly coming to like the back burner, and our prime minister, or Yerevan's prime minister, seems to be echoing that you know, Artsakh is I don't want to repeat the words, but for educational purposes, Artsakh is essentially Azerbaijan's you know, problem to handle. And in reality, I think we as Armenians in the diaspora need to elevate the necessity and the focus on Artsakh so that every organization in the diaspora understands that its grassroots constituency wants to make sure to help Artsakh. And I think that will definitely pull the needle a little bit in the right direction. Because I feel right now we're a little bit lost and we're a little bit disheveled as diaspora. You know?
It definitely feels that way.
Yeah.
Does it seem that way, Shant? Does it seem that way from your perspective? Can you see that? Does it feel that? Can you feel that from there?
Yeah, I feel like it's slowly getting more and more forgotten about. Unfortunately, right after the war, people had, you know, the messaging of, hey, you know, now is not the time to criticize the government or the lack thereof or their efforts or what they're doing. Stay united. And I said, well, you can't stay united behind somebody that is like destroying your country. Even if you don't think that he's a traitor, he's not qualified. In the American system, in the US tradition, if like somebody runs a company and they try to do a good job, but they fail, what do? They resign. Or if somebody coaches a team and they don't win the championship, they go to the championship and they lose 3 times in a row, they resign. You know, this guy has lost the championship. He's lost everything. And it's time for him to go so that we can move on and find ways to rebuild the country. But there was a big crowd that wanted to just be like, hey, you know what? Don't criticize. Just stay behind the government. And now whenever he's making statements that are just unquestionably anti-Armenian or anti-our national goals, that whole group that always said, just stay united, guys, has completely gone silent.
Yeah.
They've gone silent, and because it's, you know what, it's like buyer's remorse. They don't want to admit that they were wrong. And hey, man, I know how that is. You know, it's very hard to admit that you were wrong, and it's not their fault. All of us were tricked. Okay, all of us had high hopes for this country, and it's okay. You know, we could agree to disagree, but let's not forget about Armenia just because, you know, that guy that you were supporting ended up being the wrong guy. You know, we could still help Armenia and Artsakh, whether you like Pashinyan or you don't like Pashinyan. Let's just not turn it into like a, he is a traitor or he isn't a traitor. Yeah, we could have that convo, but we could have the more essential and important convo, which for my friend Rafi would be, does Artsakh need fluoride in their water? Or for me, it would be, where should we build the next greenhouse? Or for somebody else, it would be, where are we going to put 3D printers and CNC routers so that these kids could start building stuff and learning stuff? You know, everybody else has their own thing, and we should have that conversation more often instead of the, is he a traitor or is he not? You know, I have my opinion. I know you guys know where I stand, but
right, well
you know,
said,
we have
well said.
the important conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well said. Yeah. Go ahead, Greg. Sorry.
Yeah, so much. I'm almost curious because again, because of the disconnect and the informational disconnect. Can you describe like the daily life? What we hear is obviously, you know, top level. We hear what Azerbaijan wants. We hear what Yerevan doesn't want. We hear about some of the infrastructural issues, and we hear about the loss of land. And of course, we remember the memory of those that have lost their lives. But today, the daily, you are a person that has traveled the remnant of Artsakh currently through and through. We know, I know from folks telling me. What do you feel is their understanding of their current position, their future? What are the ordinary Artsakhis thinking right now? If you can answer that. I know it's a heavy question. It's a loaded question.
In a general overall sense, they're more worried about Armenia and Syunik right now, and they ask and speak about that more than anything happening right here. Yeah. They say, "Oh, you came from Armenia 10 days ago. What's going on? What's up with Syunik? What's happening over there?" Because they understand that this is one body, you know, and you can't just say, let's lose a few limbs here and a few limbs there and we'll go on. They're all vital organs of one body. So they're more concerned about what's happening to Armenia. To be honest, the Russian presence here, it generally makes it safe for us to say that, I could safely say that they're not going anywhere next week or next month or next year. You know, these guys are here, they're gonna be here for a while. That gives people a certain sense of security, but that doesn't mean that that shepherd is secure when he's going off and about, or that child is secure from, if that Azeri just loses his mind and says, hey, you know what, I'm gonna shoot at that school, I'm gonna shoot at those kids. Well, what are we gonna do? What's our response? Up until now, we haven't had a response. So there are those concerns, but through and through, they know Artsakh's here. They know it's going to stay here. They're not going anywhere, and we have to do everything to encourage them. But they are very concerned with the developments in Armenia because the developments are pointing towards Artsakh being totally 100% cut off from the rest of the Armenian nation. And that'll make it very hard for us to do anything. There's concern, but We're resilient people, here to stay.
We are. We are. And honestly, I just kind of want to also highlight that your journey into Artsakh produced an amazing story of your personal life, right? You found, you formed a family on your way to Artsakh, and you recently became a father, which is, a heartfelt congratulations to you and your wife for that. So out of this, darkness, an incredible story came out, right? And it could serve the people of the diaspora and Armenia and Artsakh to understand that in all of this, look at the things that can come from this, right?
Yeah, personally, I'm pretty happy about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Greg. Thank you, David. I truly appreciate the time and chatting with you guys.
Sean, thank you for the work you're doing. I do have a question about the current situation for the people living there. We hear here, I serve on the Artsakh task force here in the Bay Area. We hear from representatives from Artsakh government that there are monetary compensation to families. There is certain aid getting to families from the government. Are you seeing that? Is that true? What are you seeing?
I'm seeing the positive and negative effects of what's happened there. Maybe around 3 months after the war, I want to say in February, whenever the people were kind of like straightening their spine and starting to go back to work, they started giving out 68,000 AMD, which is about $135, $140 to every person in the household. Excuse me, to every child and woman in the household under age 18. And yes, that helped people, but it also created laziness. People said, well, you know what? I'm getting this money right now. I'm not going to work. There were people that started working, and then a lot of projects went back on hold. And what I told them was that, hey, you know what? You could give somebody 68, or you could give them 30, and you could be like, hey, you know what? Come to work and you'll get 100. There's infrastructure projects that could have been taken off already through that welfare check that was coming in. And that money, yes, it came in, but it's just like, it's, teach a man to fish type of thing. That was kind of the effect that happened. I'll be honest. I mean, if you talk to any village leader here in Martuni region, because I'm really, really familiar with the guys here, or in the city, every single one will say that exact number to you. They'll say that those 68s just killed us. Those 68,000s killed us because they made everybody complacent and lazy and not wanting to work. They said, hey, we're fine right now. And if you think about it, I mean, the cost of living in Artsakh it's pretty low. Rent is a third or a quarter of the price that it is in Yerevan, except for in Stepanakert, where demand is really high. And there's Yerevan prices. Unfortunately, there's people, they're killing the people with the prices that people are asking for. There's terrible landlords. And if they really wanted to help the people, they wouldn't just, pass these 68,000s. They try to, create, some emergency plan of, hey, you know what? These people are displaced. For the last 9 months, you guys used to collect only 50,000 dirhams, $100 in rent. And now you're asking for $400. You're taking advantage of this family and you're taking advantage of the program that's coming in. I'm not a rent control type of guy, and that's not the argument I'm trying to get into, but there's these little things that are easier to help the people instead of just, like we're plugging the holes in a ship, but like we need a new ship. It's really, we need a new ship. Yeah. Look, one like last little thing on that. They're creating housing right now. They're building housing and apartments and stuff like that is happening right now. Sure. But prior to that, they went around these villages and there's a lot of homes that are unoccupied, that they only need 1 or 2 windows changed and a furnace installed, and people will live there. And it's more important, in my opinion, to repopulate these villages and to repopulate them by looking at the demographics and seeing that, hey, you know what? I have a school here that has 5 children, and that village has 5 teachers. Each kid has a teacher practically. Okay. If we bring in 10 more children around that age here, okay, now it would be a good school, a functioning kindergarten, you know. And if you look at the demographics and you play around with it a little bit and you direct people in the right places, it would have simplified everything. Because instead of a village just having 20 people and the other one 20 people, and then you build a new village somewhere for these guys and they're 20 people, it makes no sense. You know, you should strengthen the villages you have, look at the numbers and work it out. But like I said, there's a lot of critical thinking and scientific thinking, you know, that doesn't really go into what we're doing. Look, check this one thing out. The budget for the police of Artsakh this year is 30% higher than the 2009-2020. Now, let's think of this for a second. We lost 70% of Artsakh, okay? But now the same police are going to get 30% more money in their budget. It's like, it doesn't make sense. You know, there's things that don't make sense. But
yeah, this focus on beefing up police force, we're also seeing in Yerevan as well, right?
Oh, like, yes, it's terrible.
It's really awful. That is really odd. I mean, and thank you for giving that context. If we're not aware of that, like people are not, and that doesn't seem like that's really reported either. We're not seeing that.
It's honestly, they're kind of ruining the flavor of Yerevan, because it's a safe city. It's a beautiful city. Even like as a tourist, when you come from the American, like one of those LA, San Francisco type of cities, and you go there and you go like, wow, you know, I don't have sirens going off every second. And there's like, I don't need a cop on every corner. And a little kid could go down at 11 at night and walk to a store and it's fine. They're kind of changing that. Right now, it's all sirens and red and blue lights and everything. It's changing the culture of the city. It's kind of making it a police state, unfortunately.
Yeah, we're gonna touch on that briefly when we get into the year recap. But I had not heard that about Artsakh, so thank you for that information. And that is disturbing. Like you said, the budget allocation to that could go to other programming, that could go to other essential needs for the people. A question about the water insecurity that's there. Just, I know we touched on that a few minutes ago, but what I'm confused by is, if the government is providing aid to these families, are we not seeing anything from the government to get water to these families at the same time? They just can't.
They are working on it. I won't say that they're not working on it. Those two villages, they tried to dig wells. They started digging those wells, I want to say in May. So what is that, 7 months ago? In May, they started trying to dig wells. They dug two that didn't hit water. They finally hit water and they started pulling these lines to go to different places. And the villages that I mentioned, Pertashen and Yemishchan, the target date is by this coming May, they will have running water throughout the week. But my criticism on all of these type of construction efforts is that there's 6 people working on it, or 8 people, or 10 people max, you know. There should be an entire army of people working on it. There should be, instead of police officers on every corner, there should be people, you know, digging these lines and putting these water pipes and stuff like that. It's just, our focus isn't on the right place. Even when Martuni didn't have power after the war because the lines were hit, and our main power substation, relay station, whatnot, had to go through Shushi, and we had promised the Azeris that we would send them power, we wouldn't interrupt that. Stepanakert would go dark, we would go dark, but Shushi would have power, because we had promised them that we're going to send that power their way, or we wouldn't cut it off. So we keep our promises to the enemy, we keep them quite well, you know, but to our own people, it's not as much. The most painful thing for me, go ahead.
Yes, sorry. Go ahead. No, please continue.
The most painful thing.
The most painful thing for me is that we've kind of, it seems like the people have been beat down so much that, you know, like you should be pissed off. You should go there. It's like, you shouldn't be pissed off that somebody took your parking spot. You should be pissed off that this guy's not working on you having electricity and running water. You know, you should go there and make a big demand. But it's far, but they don't have a car. You know, there's a separation between the people making the decisions and the people living living out what happens because of those decisions. And the people, they'll wake up, they're waking up. They'll be all right. They'll be all right.
Question. I'm going to actually piggyback off that question because that will, if you, by the way, I can't see you guys, but if you can see and hear me, we're going to continue. So what do you call it? My question is this: in parts of diaspora's aspect, what do you feel in terms of reawakening that spirit, that fighting spirit? And do you think the diaspora has a major role to play in kind of bringing in that, you know, that second wind, that next level of, you know what, you guys have kind of paid a big kind of price for being there, and we'll continue, we'll help, we'll kind of re-energize to kind of, you know, we got your back essentially, right?
Absolutely, 100%. They have the biggest role, because that is the biggest asset that we have is, you know, this thing right here, the intelligence that we have all around the world, you know, amongst our people, and the friends and the connections and the businesses and the institutions. And the diaspora's role is to help. The role in this case, you know, is to not just be quiet and say, hey, you know what, it's all bad news coming out of Armenia. And, you know, I heard about that for 44 days. We put up with it for a few months. I mean, I just can't take it anymore. And they tune it out and they change the channel. We have to get out of that because we need that energy here. The people need that energy here. And whenever the people here see that, hey, you know what, my compatriots across the world they're making demands for me. They're demanding from my government more than I'm demanding from them. They'll step up, you know, and they'll step up. It's unfortunately, you know, the day-to-day life that people have here, you know, get your milk, get your cheese, get your eggs, get your whatnot, you know, do your chores. It's pretty tough because of the situation that we're in, and that occupies a lot of the time. But we need the diaspora to light that fire, and that's how it happened before. You know, that's what happened before, and that's what has to happen again. Otherwise, we're like that frog in the water that's boiling. You know, that's us right here. The water is starting to boil, and we're just getting acclimated to that temperature. And pretty soon, you know, we're not gonna have any fight if somebody from the outside doesn't come and scream at us and say, hey, you know, wake up, we see what's wrong, you see what's wrong, let's do something about it. No, we need the diaspora more than anything.
Yeah,
nice. That's, I mean, everybody that's listening definitely kind of echoes that, and those of you that are listening afterwards on your drive or on your daily commutes, when you're hearing this, understand that we all have a role to play in what's happening in Syunik, in Artsakh, in Armenia. So thank you for stating that. We need to hear that. We want to hear that, and we need to kind of rise up to the occasion. David, what's kind of, I think that the best thing to do now would be, you have a lot of initiatives, right? That you're doing a lot of grassroots thing. How can we help, and what are those initiatives, and how are you funding them? How can we broadcast the need to fund more of those initiatives? And we're talking about you at this moment, your organizations. Obviously, we also are participants of other organizations, but I want to kind of amplify what you do so that we can kind of elevate that and make that kind of, you know, be a little bit stronger than what it is currently.
I appreciate it, guys. I mean, the organization I created, the nonprofit over here, it's called the Lorik Humanitarian Fund. The site should be up in a little bit. The young girls in the neighboring village, they're working on it. Unfortunately, they also have power issues, power once every 2.5, 3 days, stuff like that, internet issues. So it's taking longer than I wanted, but that's the name of the foundation or the nonprofit. I raise money.
Is there a way that somebody, how do you raise money?
Yeah, how can we help? How can we help support that? Yeah.
It's mostly through individual people's donations, small donations, and that's fine for me. Armenia is also a country that is very bad at credit processing. There's only a few banks that have credit processing. If you've noticed, if you've ever tried to buy like a hand knit doll from Armenia or Artsakh, you got to do like a MoneyGram or like a bank transfer. So that's one of the problems here. So once the site is up and they could do credit processing, it'll be easier for it to just go straight to the foundation and not kind of to me and then me transfer it to the foundation. Because most of the time for people to do a direct bank transfer, they have a hard time doing it. So they transfer it to me and I transfer it there. I personally would prefer that it just goes there so that nobody thinks there's any funny business. But it's look, I don't need to plug my stuff too much. Just meeting you guys, seeing you guys, talking to you guys, the work that you're doing, just sharing this information is already enough. And trust, there's a lot of people that want to help me and support me. And there's a lot of other groups that are doing great work. So it's okay. I don't need to plug more about what I'm doing. I just appreciate you guys having this initiative, having this show, and inviting me on as a guest. And I've seen, previous people that you guys have hosted. So your heart is in the right place. Your mind is in the right place. Keep doing what you guys are doing.
Thank you so much, Sean. And you're a friend of the show as well, man. So thank you. We'd love to have you back again in the near future.
Of course, anytime.
Yeah. And we definitely, you're our guest. We want to highlight the work you're doing. We want to highlight your foundation and things. So thank you for sharing all of that with our viewers. Yeah.
So, I mean, at this point, I don't want to, you're a family man. You got a lot of gifts that you're going to be distributing. I see what you're doing on Facebook. And I just want to, wish you luck in, finishing out this year. And thank you for everything you're doing, as well as, whenever, we'll keep this channel open. You know me now through many other connections. However, we can help you. We can definitely, we would love to kind of contribute. So let's not say goodbye. We'll say till next time. And I really appreciate you taking the time and talking to us. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, David. Thank you very much, Greg. I appreciate it. Good luck. Much love. Till next time.
Take care, man.
Happy New Year to all the Artsakhs.
Yes, Happy New Year to you guys.
Happy New Year. Merry Christmas.
Thank you. Thanks.
Bye.
Phenomenal guest, phenomenal work he's doing, Greg. Thank you for bringing him to the show for us to spotlight him. It was really...
and there's a lot of people that I can shout out and say thank you to for making this happen. I appreciate you for doing that. I do have to apologize. The entire 20 minutes of the last end, whatever's going on my end, I don't know. I did not see anything, just my voice. So thank you to everyone that's stay with us, to those folks that are continuing to be interested, be informed. Everything, a lot of things that Sean said, really resonate with me, where I understand and we cannot let go of the need to support Artsakh, Syunik, and Armenia in general, right? Because those are all, that is all Armenia. One thing I feel like we've never made as a connection in the 30 years, and I'm talking about from Yerevan to maybe some aspects of the diaspora, there needs to be a holy bond. That there is no difference between diaspora and Armenia. And Armenia, when I talk about Armenia, I mean Artsakh as well. So and it's definitely our job now to kind of reinforce their morale, because you gotta understand they're feeling down right now, and it's resonating, and we can you can see that happening, and it's up to the diaspora, and nobody else is going to help. Europe's not helping. Right. Some of the allies in the area, maybe they're doing some work, but it's the diaspora that needs to kind of get that second breath to move forward. So I really like hearing that.
Yeah, well said. Well said. And you just, you could tell he's just so knowledgeable and educated on everything, more than just Armenia and Artsakh. So the great guest and amazing, phenomenal work he's doing. We'll keep spotlighting him and sharing his information. Once we get that foundation site, once his site is up, we'll definitely share that, add that to our link tree and all that stuff. So people can really help get involved.
I mean, personally, I've learned a lot today. And also, I'm happy that he actually reinforced a lot of the things that I have thought is going on. I guess let's continue with the second portion of what we're going to do. And for those of you still with us, thank you. It's it's pre-New Year's Eve. This is our kind of a last show of 2021, and it's been an interesting year to say the least. Interesting being kind of a soft word usage here.
Yes.
What David and I did is we essentially snapshot together a lot of the major headlines, and we're going to kind of congest the year into a recap. It's going to take, we'll try to do it as interactive as possible, but and for those of you curious to do a run through of what has transpired to today, we're going to most likely try to accomplish that now. It's a big feat, but
it is a big feat. It's a big feat. It's a lot to cover. And yeah, I mean, obviously there, like we were talking about Greg and preparing, right? Like we just want to give everyone a heads up. Sadly, there's not a lot of positive news. There is not a lot of positive news out of Armenia and Artsakh, understandably, right? Coming from this war. We will touch on the positivity as it comes up each month. Plus, we have our 12 days of positivity leading us up to Armenian Christmas to help us get through that and just kind of get us going into the new year the right way. But Greg, I guess, how would you like to start? Should we go January? You want to go?
So essentially what we'll do is we'll try to we'll condense and we'll go as fast as we can because there is a lot to cover. So January, 2021. We kind of open up the year, and David, I'll let you kind of start it, and then I'll continue with February, and we'll just kind of run through it. What that will give you, the viewer, is an overview of what transpired, and for you to kind of refresh your memory and kind of re-jolt yourself into what needs to continue and how we need to move forward. And you can make that decision of are we on the right path or are we not?
Yeah. Yes, Greg. Yes. Shall I share? Or would you like to share?
No, I will share.
Okay, great. So look, January, Moscow, you guys might recall, Azeris shot down the Russian helicopter late in 2020. They treated that as willful murder. Also, parts of Syunik's, how do you say this word, Greg? Help me. Yes, Syunik village was surrendered to Azerbaijan. That's not good news. Pashinyan, Aliyev, and Putin signed an agreement to unblock Armenia-Azerbaijan border. That was kind of the beginning of what we're seeing more of now with this whole normalization, right? Turkey and Azerbaijan held military drills in Gars. They were going to hold military drills in Gars in February. Gars is historic Armenian land in historic Western Armenia, right, Greg? Now Eastern Turkey. Kocharian.
My grandfather's from there.
Yes, and actually, no, Karin is named after.
No, it's Ezra.
Yeah.
But he migrated to Karin from Karin to Gars.
Yes. Kocharian was back in court as his trial resumed in January. The Armenian American Museum announced historic groundbreaking in the summer. We'll get to that in July. And then there was a new report that revealed a higher number of civilian killings by Azeri forces during the war. 5 POWs were returned to Armenia in January. So,
so as we progress into February, Artsakh captives must be released, says the United Nations. That was kind of like the soft touch that the international body made onto the what is happening in Baku as in terms of the POW situation. The actual commencement of the Azeri-Turkish war games, let's call them that, as they call it, the training missions in Kars that David just mentioned, actually took place. So again, we always see that the enemy is always kind of talking not in fables, but they're actually doing things that they say. South Australia, big positive news. South Australia recognized Artsakh, and we actually have a friend that we from our YP community that had a hand in this. We'll give him a shout out another time, but that's a move in the right direction. The most populous state of Australia recognizes Artsakh, and I think it's will galvanize more and more territories and countries in the world recognizing Artsakh moving forward. Opposition protests were arrested in front of parliament. This is where we kind of started seeing the initial cracks in the quote unquote democratic My Step alliance in the Pashinyan government, where he came in as a protest leader and then protests against him have been cracked down upon. Now, this is before elections. So,
and now, Greg, forward, we kept seeing that happening, right? And it just kind of, it does not scream democracy, right?
No,
yeah,
and that's a problem. I know we just talked about Artsakh with Sean, but in Syunik, immediately after the capitulation, we started seeing exactly what everybody, including Monte Melkonyan, said would happen: is the issue of water and the what do you call it? There was a report of contamination of water that was debunked that maybe it was not Azeri, and then the outright water supply was cut off to parts of Syunik. Right. What I want to highlight here is in the 30 years that Armenians held the liberated lands of Artsakh, we always had that as a pawn that we can use. Armenians rarely, if ever, utilize the kind of tactics that Azerbaijan and also by proxy Turkey are utilizing on us immediately after the surrender in November. So that's just to kind of showcase how things might play out in the future. Another news: Azeris block Armenians from visiting Dadivank in Artsakh. This was after they sided with Russian peacekeepers, saying that they will allow us to visit, but obviously that is not the case. And right now that whole monastery is in limbo. Seems to me under international pressure, it's not being dismantled, but right now Armenians are not there.
It just seems like more intimidation, right? It's intimidation, right? More intimidation, right, Greg?
Yes. 5 POWs were released from Baku in February. However, the tally of how many Armenians were and still are in Baku's hands is in the hundreds. ICRC visits Lebanese Armenians being held captive by Azerbaijan. Remember the story of the two Lebanese Armenians from Artsakh that were held in Baku's captivity. One of them, Maral, was released, and another one, I believe, is still there.
Right, and Maral actually repatriated back to Armenia later on. She ended up.
Yes, this is a person that came to Artsakh, paid one of the biggest prices, was held captive. A woman held captive in an Azeri prison, went back to Lebanon, and then came back immediately to Armenia. Something that has nothing to do with the war. Unfortunately, there were several jolts of earthquake, and this is a little bit of a concern because something that we always need to remember: Armenia is in a seismic area, and we heard a little bit of a jolt happening in that month of February.
Yeah, there were a couple of earthquakes.
There was also, as I mentioned, 5 POWs were returned, but Azerbaijan was playing essentially games with returning our POWs with reports of more POWs that need to come back, but have not. Filmmaker Jivan Avedisian, the gentleman that we have now with Arach Media, have now come to know him. How many things have changed in a short span of time. Yeah. His new film focuses on the latest Artsakh war, and it's actually the fundraising effort of what David, Richard, and I have been doing when we hosted Jivan and his crew here. It is the premiere of his current film and the fundraising for his next project, which is called Revival. And there's always ways of helping that. Reach out to David and myself. We can connect you.
By the way, Greg, I believe the Indiegogo is still active. It's pretty cool.
Absolutely, it is. Yeah. Absolutely. As promised, the worst of the worst. Aliyev and the Grey Wolves were building a Grey Wolves school. Grey Wolves essentially being the fascist arm of the ultra-nationalist Turkish political movement. Was building a school, a Grey Wolf school in occupied Shushi, and Erdogan thought that it would be a great idea for him to come and be there for the groundbreaking. Here is the founder of or one of the leaders of the Grey Wolves holding the plans of a Grey Wolves school that will be constructed in Shushi.
Yep. Greg, we did lose one of our own, 114-year-old Lucy Merigian passed in February in San Francisco. Dear Lucy, she passed. Yeah, go ahead, man. Sorry.
It was I'm assuming, I think it was the oldest Armenian alive, if not one of.
She passed on February 12th. February 12th. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
In the court, the California Supreme Court reversed Gavin Newsom's rejection of Sasunyan's parole, and this is Hampik Sasunyan, a gentleman that was imprisoned for essentially committing an act of a show of defiance and an act of what you can consider that there was an assault, and I don't know if it was lawfully or unlawfully. Hampik was imprisoned. He waited multiple paroles and finally was granted a release this year, which was celebrated around the Armenian diaspora, and he currently, I believe, resides in Armenia.
Yes, Greg, real quick, just give everyone background on Hampik, what he did. He murdered a Turkish consulate?
A diplomat, a Turkish diplomat, and it was done during the kind of the tumultuous years in the 80s, when Armenia's only way of showing the world that we have been a genocide surviving nation, when nobody was listening to us, was to essentially kind of go after the Turkish diplomats, who are in turn representatives and direct representatives of the Turkish state. So not necessarily the Turkish citizens. That was not a revenge on the citizens, on the everyday Turks, but rather than the Turkish diplomats, and because they represent the state.
Yes, they do. Yes.
Also in February, we had an incident which kind of was ushered in around the world and in the news as a slow-moving military coup, but essentially the Armenia's military demanded that Pashinyan resigns because of what they understood was unfolding in Syunik, and in my assumption, many other items that went through in the 44 days in the November 9 and on and on and on, especially with the escalation at that point of what we're seeing happening on the border with Syunik. And there was the head of the military, and with a lot of signatories of the top brass, have asked for the resignation of Nikol Pashinyan, the outcome of which we clearly understand and know today, as Pashinyan still being at the helm.
Yeah. Greg, their quote was that Armenia's prime minister and government are no longer able to make adequate decisions for the Armenian people in this crisis and fateful situation, post-war, Syunik being threatened, and so on, right? So that was their quote for that.
All right, David, and with that, let's move on to March.
Sure. Let's see here. Okay, so there was a European Commission which deplored Azerbaijani attacks on Shushi's Gaziantep Cathedral. So again, we were going to see and hear these statements being made, but then no real action to prevent it from happening, right? But at least a European Commission is deploring what they're doing. Obviously, there were targeted strikes on Gaziantep during the war, and we now know that they've already redesigned that cathedral, removing the domes and so on. Aliyev starts claiming that Zangezur is historic Azerbaijani territory. Just to remind everybody, Zangezur is the Azeri term for Syunik, Armenia's southern province. So the military also stood by the army chief of staff during this time. Of course, the army's calling for Pashinyan's resignation. The military stood by their chief of staff. Survivors of unlawful detention in Nagorno-Karabakh also spoke out about the war crimes. This is the Human Rights Watch actually published this. Thank you to Human Rights Watch. Where were they during the war? We started seeing stuff come out months and months later, and it's not enough, nowhere near enough for an organization that calls themselves Human Rights Watch, right, Greg?
Absolutely.
Human Rights Defender, the report, they released a report detailing the Azeri crimes against humanity. That's very important. These reports are public. They are online. Well, actually, I'm going to add the links. Remind me to do this, Greg, but I will remind myself as well. I'm going to add the links to these reports to our link tree because everyone should have access to them. These are detailed reports of all the war crimes committed by Azerbaijan. Aliyev ordered the removal of medieval Armenian inscriptions as Azeri forces destroyed Shushi's Kanatjam Church. Kanatjam Church. Yes. Yes, thank you, Greg. As you show the image of it. Yes. Snap elections in Armenia were announced for June 20. Remember, there was a lot of concern about that, questions about that. Would they even happen? They did end up happening, and we'll get to there. Greg, you and I were planning to go. Plans did not allow us to get there during that time, but we will go to Armenia, hopefully together on a working trip sometime soon, especially after what we just heard Shant share with us. Armenia's POWs were abused in custody, says the Human Rights Watch. Thank you, Human Rights Watch. But you're saying this in March. Where were you during the war? But at least they did publish this in March. Azerbaijan, they basically, here's another Human Rights Watch report. Armenian POWs were abused in custody in Azerbaijan. It's Human Rights Watch publishing this. U.S. religious freedom body places Azerbaijan on a watch list. Again, I guess it's a step in the right direction, but placing Azerbaijan on a watch list is not going to save all of these Armenian heritage and historical monuments and religious and cultural monuments. I'm not sure what will, Greg. It's beyond concerning.
I'm queuing up the next thing, which will answer the question to everybody. Yeah, let's keep going.
Yeah, sure. Human Rights Watch calls for international pressure on Baku to release POWs. So again, we're seeing more of a groundswell of these things, but still nothing actually, not enough action actually coming from Azerbaijan. Azerbaijan destroys another Armenian church after the war. They did that, and that church was, Greg, I'm not sure if you're sharing it right now.
Yeah, absolutely. It was in the southern region, and you can see the trees as the markers of it being these photos not being falsified, right? On the right and then the top, right. This church was completely leveled to the ground.
And this was BBC reporting this, among other entities. And actually, I believe this church was in the 45 Days film by Emil Gieson, a former guest of ours, whose film is available on Vimeo, that I was watching with my folks earlier. So I believe that church was in that film, very briefly. Armenia, of course, guys, all this is happening. COVID is still raging. There was a third wave of COVID in Armenia. In March, there were reports of Armenia bracing for that third wave. It did happen. And COVID is still very much a threat all over the world, including still in Armenia. Human Rights Watch warned of Erdogan's onslaught on rights and democracy. This is not related to Artsakh. This is having to do with their actual human rights and democracy in their lands, in Turkey. Okay, so democratic norms are threatened by Erdogan, and that's what this report is detailing. Turkey, okay, this is again Human Rights Watch. That actually is the report. We can share it. Artsakh parliament grants official status to the Russian language. Obviously, we have Russian peacekeepers. Some have said that there's as many as 10,000. It's definitely more than 2,000, probably 5,000 plus, right, Greg, that are there with Russia's protection there, ensuring the protection of Artsakh. It almost seems to make sense to have that there, right, Greg? I'm not sure if you'd like to add any more to that, but Russian language being official status, official language of Artsakh. The 4 top ex-security officers were sentenced to life in prison for the Dink murder, for Hrant Dink. So at least this is some measure of justice for the murder of Hrant Dink, the former editor of the Argos News. It's the Armenian language paper in Istanbul, Turkey. So here we're getting there through March. the war of 2020 was the worst for Archbishop Barkev Martirosyan. He had to live through three different bouts of aggression. He, of course, is no longer the Archbishop there in Artsakh now. I believe he was reassigned to Echmiadzin, Greg. I'm not sure if we know
he's
more
in
on that.
Echmiadzin, but I believe he's slowly retiring. That's
Yes.
what is happening.
Constitutional Court ruled in favor of Kocharyan. All those trials that were against Kocharyan, he was, it seems, to be absolved of those charges. The Constitutional Court ruled in his favor, Greg.
Yeah, and this kind of serves to kind of this whole process of dragging him through the court system. Whatever the charges that were brought against him through essentially Pashinyan's court now have been rejected, and again we know what happened moving forward.
Right. So moving along, Azeris continued to destroy Armenian monuments and heritage in Artsakh, the now occupied lands of Artsakh, but they destroyed the Armenian Genocide Memorial in Shushi. Again, not very positive there. Greg, go ahead and take April away, man, and we'll keep moving.
Yeah, I forgot there was one thing that I wanted to queue up. There was this.
Sure.
The Azeris threw rocks at a transport, at a car transporting remains of the Armenian soldiers. Again, this is not something that we just piecemealed. We just kind of got everything out of the news cycle for those months, and that just paints a picture of who we're kind of being asked to build a future with. Moving forward, we are now in the month. Yeah, in the month of March.
The intimidation, right, Greg? Continued intimidation.
Intimidation. The news story kind of starts with a little bit of positivity. Armenia beats Romania 3-2 in the World Cup qualifier that month, and essentially is propelled to the top of the bracket. Currently, I don't believe that is the case anymore. There was through the summer there were a little bit of losses and ties that should not have happened, but nevertheless that was a kind of a high point for the Armenian national team.
Yes.
This is important. Artsakh's war hero, a man that was known as Commando, passed away. He was very important for in the first war. And Major General Akari Tertatevosyan passes away. This is a huge loss for the movement because the man was so integral in the first war of liberation.
Yes.
Sorry. The high-tech, sorry.
It's okay.
We're in April, right? Yes. High-tech minister resigned after a very nasty assault report in a cafe, I believe it was. Where essentially the minister was asked why isn't he at work when the whole nation needs to be working, and he assaulted the woman asking him that question. State Department, the U.S. State Department highlights Azeri war crimes and Turkey's role in Karabakh, essentially a U.S. entity now linking the two being locked in arms. Remember, in the war of the 44 Days War, Turkey constantly either denied or played down their involvement, where in the whole world, Russia, CSTO, and the United States knew and understood that Turkey was fully involved in this latest conflict. And now the State Department is stating that. The court reaffirms the ruling of to reinstate the army chief. That was David, I think something. Yes, the army chief that was at the forefront of the essentially the kind of the letter sent to the administration stating that Nikol Pashinyan needs to resign. This is I'm sorry, I don't mean to laugh, but another item is that Kocharyan and others have been cleared of coup charges and will progress into kind of the forefront of what is to happen politically. Again, look, on and on and on, we see these roadblocks being hurled at anybody trying to kind of, slow down what is happening, which essentially was happening is the handing over of Artsakh, in my opinion. But there is some semblance of a rule of law in Armenia, and the courts seem to be upholding these things. They reinstated the army chief after he was accused of essentially staging a military coup. Then Kocharyan was implicated in some of this after already being cleared from other court cases. Moving along in April. Yeah.
Disturbing female protesters on Mother's Day in Armenia were arrested. Again, anti-democracy feel to that. Just they were protesting government.
This was another building block until we later on understand is going to be the move forward of the way that things are, the new today, right?
Yeah, again, many of these mothers are mothers that are grieving the loss of a son, or maybe they have a son who's or a husband that's in captivity, right? So like government needs to be doing more, and they were protesting. Go ahead, sorry.
Yes, there was a horrendous military trophy museum park opened up in Baku, and that essentially attested to the genocidal policy of both Azerbaijan and the Turkish past. This was essentially like a warmongering museum showcasing the helmets of fallen Armenian soldiers, amongst other displays of Armenian soldiers in less than, humane stances.
Right. Actual mannequin Armenian soldiers in different disparaging situations for people to tour and celebrate in the park. It's absolutely disgusting. Go ahead, Greg.
Aliyev again threatens to take Zangezur as Syunik are in Armenia by force, quote unquote, whether Armenia wants it or not. Similarly, same 100 U.S. call on President Biden to do the right thing and recognize the Armenian genocide. Droves of anti-Pashinyan protesters from Syunik, understanding what is going on and what is kind of befalling onto that region. Now we understand, we clearly see what they were concerned about, because the news out of Syunik throughout 2021 has been so detrimental. And yet these, anyone that was leading the protests and the protesters themselves by the hundreds were arrested. Again, this is going back to what we just spoke with Shant about, the beefing up of the police state, essentially, which is an unnecessary tactic in a country like Armenia, where the citizen is not the enemy, unless that is what's being asked. That is what's being stated, meaning the average Armenian is now a threat to the state.
Right. And by the way, the U.S. played a large role in helping beef up Armenia, Yerevan's police force.
Yes.
The U.S. played a large role in that. The people need to know that.
Exactly. Yeah. The United States is actually a big player in beefing up police states around the world, just as a rule. Locally here, Shant Charshafjian assumes role as Glendale Unified Board of Education president.
Shout out to Shant. He's a friend.
Yeah,
He's a friend.
Yeah, that is good to know. Azerbaijani forces fired Artsakh civilians.
Again, intimidation.
Yes, and then a major kind of American news is United States President Joe Biden recognizes the Armenian genocide on the Armenian Genocide Recognition Day, April 24th. Immediately, of course, angry Erdogan calls on Biden to reverse the genocide recognition, but obviously that still stands.
Yeah. Then, of course, they're damaging Gaziantep in Shushi.
Yes, the famed symbol of Shushi and of Gaziantep are these angels, which are, if you can see my mouse here, right here, and they're adorned in the on this tower, have been removed by Azeri occupants. Oh, dude, this is
Yeah, I know, Greg. I know. So go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, no, go for it. Armenian shepherd beaten by Azeris in Syunik, says the human rights defender. The same human rights defender that is soon to leave his post, I believe, because he is being ousted and he essentially fired. Armenian POW Viken Yuljektyan daughter opens up about the letters that she received from her father. That is the man that has stood trial and is and is a POW in Baku. He's a Lebanese Armenian, one of those two high-profile Lebanese Armenian cases that we've covered, Maral being the other one.
Right.
Armenia's war crime probe finally starts to include the high-profile incidents of beheadings of POWs, as well as the deployment of the Islamist mercenaries from the region of Afrin and I believe Idlib in Syria, which now NATO has also underlined. The European Union and Brussels know about it. But again, David, to your statement, these are just thoughts and prayers, as we like to say, rather than actual hardcore levied threats to Baku.
Right.
Finally, we've reported earlier that President Biden recognized the Armenian genocide. David and I and Richard, who is a co-host here at the show, have been adamantly fighting for the recognition of the Armenian genocide. However, the way that it happened definitely softened that jubilation when ANCA disappointedly mentioned that the reports that the Biden will waive congressional sanctions on Azerbaijan that same month of April. David,
just a week later, Greg, just a week later, like 6 days later, maybe even less than a week, he waives the Section 907 of the Freedom Support Act, which prevents U.S. military aid to Azerbaijan. By waiving it, it allows military aid to Azerbaijan. So, hey, I'll give you your genocide recognition, but sorry, I'm going to keep funding the current genocide of your people. So that's exactly what was done. And I don't know, I think DOD, Department of Defense, has the real control of the reins on the White House. That's what I think, in my opinion, because I don't want to believe that Biden would willingly want to do that. But Greg, that's my opinion.
All right, moving on to May, David.
All right. So we now see in May, there was actual evidence of Azeris actually dismantling Kazanchev's Cathedral. I'm not sure if you want to share, and you shared it. There you go. Their actual domes are off, and they are, quote unquote, remodeling the Armenian Apostolic Christian Cathedral to whatever they're going to make it. More monuments were destroyed in Hadrut. We did have 3 more Armenian POWs return to Armenia in May. Over 120 European lawmakers called on the EU to demand the release of POWs. So again, that's a nice statement, but it's not enacting any real change within Azerbaijan. We just talked to Shant about Artsakh's water security has been threatened. It was threatened more in May as well. The foreign minister expressed that. Kocharyan's Armenian Alliance kicked off their campaign efforts. Here we are in May, approaching the June 20 election. The Armenian Alliance started their campaign efforts, which they would eventually lose. The State Department let the ball drop on the South Caucasus. Yes, we know that. Baku admitted to killing Armenian captives. They actually admitted that they were killing POWs. Let's see here, Azeris, this is now where we started to see, right, Greg, in May, I believe it was May 12th, we start to see Azeris start to cross into Armenian territory and start to occupy Armenian land, starting in the Sevlich or Black Lake region, right, Greg? This is where we started to see that.
And that is a photo of Sevlich right here.
Yes.
Which Azeris occupied half of it, to which famously, Pashinyan was quoted saying, this is just nothing but a small little pond. You know what I mean? Again, this is going to be a story on and on and on through this prime minister's rhetoric towards the major grievances that are being levied against the Armenian state and the Armenian nation. That is kind of what we at Arach Media would like to showcase and highlight. We do not see many major statements of, hey, that's not right. Don't do that. Armenia will retaliate. We will blah, 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 blah. In reality, there's tepid statements. And this I think, turned to the CSTO for rapid response, which never happened.
Yeah, which was, they just said, we'll monitor it. They did not respond to help. So if Armenia is a member of CSTO, this did not warrant, according to CSTO, this did not warrant their response to help provide security to Armenia. We have Macron from France calling for the immediate withdrawal of Azeri forces. Aliyev lays the foundation for a new mosque in Shushi. Again, Shushi, the real heart and soul of Artsakh, the historic Armenian town, the fortress city, and Aliyev's laying down a mosque there. They're labeling POWs terrorists, which they continue to do, and they tried them as terrorists, as we see throughout the year. Armenia appealed to Russia for assistance with Azeri soldiers on Armenian land, which, by the way, they are still there. They are still all along Armenia's eastern border with Azerbaijan. There are still Azeri soldiers, and they're planting there. They have posts there, and they are as far as 6 kilometers in, anywhere from 3 to 6 kilometers in. This is from Arman Tatoyan, the human rights defender himself, hearing this directly from him, and they are still there. And it's unacceptable. It's unacceptable. Under pressure, Pashinyan did confirm that there was another secret accord with Baku. Greg, what can we share on this briefly? This was another very concerning thing. We're wondering what was done now. Did he give away Syunik? There was all kinds of fears about what was happening there.
Yeah, well, this was around the here. I'll pull this up. Around, so leading up to everything that's happening in Syunik, everyone's always wondering, well, when will Armenia's military or Armenia essentially kind of push back? And the encroachment on Khapan, the encroachment near Goris, and then that highway, now that we know what essentially Pashinyan's accord with Baku was, essentially that particular highway and those eastern lands, whatever Azerbaijanis are doing, is going to be the lay of the land, because now we are clearly in this new phase of a completely different road being built. Essentially, no pushback, nothing against anything that Azerbaijan has done, is doing, and continues to do against Armenians.
Right.
And his meeting with Baku, or his conversations with Baku, only reinforced any of these horrendous items.
Yeah. Armenia did sue Turkey, or did initiate suit of Turkey for their role in the Artsakh war. That's the right thing to do. What, if anything, comes of that lawsuit, we have yet to see. A positive, a very, very large positive from within our own community here. The Bay Area Artsakh Task Force Humanitarian Aid Committee raised $100,000 as a community. We hosted the first ever 4-hour soldiers virtual gala online. I actually got to MC that. That was a huge honor. The community, amazing, huge, immense support. This is going to the Insurance Foundation for Servicemen in Armenia, which provides monetary aid for the families of fallen and wounded soldiers. Our community, man, Northern California, raised $100,000 within the Bay Area, which was absolutely amazing. It's a very, very huge achievement. Fighting, a brawl ensued in Gerharkunik between Armenians and Azeri soldiers. Tumo opened a new installation in Venice. There was an Armenian soldier killed by Azeri fire in Gerharkunik. The aggression continued and started. And
Gerharkunik already being around Lake Sevan. So as we talk about these things, I hope you're tracking. Artsakh, Nakhichevan is on the other side of Armenia. Syunik to the south. Gerharkunik is by Lake Sevan. Yes. This is essentially Armenia surrounded.
Yep, exactly. And like right around that central part of the country, right? Which they're probably trying to force that transit way across, right? Or who knows what else they're trying to do. The foreign minister Ivazian, who was also an interim, right, or who replaced the prior rather, he resigned in May as all this is happening. Again, that does not lend itself to a whole lot of confidence. You have the army calling for a resignation. You have, by the way, you have all of the international nonprofit organizations even, and like humanitarian aid organizations calling for Pashinyan's resignation, and he does not. He digs his heels in even more. Foreign minister and other deputy ministers resigned as because they just didn't want to be a part of it, right, Greg? So why don't we go ahead and transition to June and keep it going, and we got a lot to cover.
Yeah, as we mentioned, again, continuing covering the case with one of the Lebanese Armenian POWs, Viken Yujekyan. He was hospitalized due to poor health. President Macron again calls on Baku to pull out of Armenia. Again, it's funny that Macron has a little bit more to say than Yerevan in this case. And again, nothing that was stated by Macron has been done because Azerbaijan and Turkey just don't give a damn, and that's kind of the lay of the land.
Right.
Exactly. Azerbaijan stages trial of Armenian POWs. Essentially, the trial was a show trial because POWs by the Geneva Convention need to be released back to their places of origin. But that is not the worst that POWs are going to be facing as we can continue with the news stories down the line. Yerevan and Baku resume border standoff talks. Again, this is something that happened in Syunik. An insane story emerged out of this kind of hit the nation by storm. This was the horrendous news of the atrocious stacking and storing of the Armenian soldier remains. This is viewer discretion, of course, in the morgue in Yerevan. Apparently, the officials of the morgue have been reprimanded, but the Minister of Health, I don't think she was fired.
No, she was.
And I don't think there was much of a outrage from the Pashinyan administration into the atrocious handling of the bodies of the fallen soldiers. Okay,
yeah,
these are the boys that were
defending
Artsakh, stacked in unrefrigerated basements in Yerevan morgue.
Absolutely disgusting.
Azeris started paving roads and digging trenches to reinforce their encroachment on Syunik. Azerbaijan forces opened fire at Armenians in the Nakhichevan region or the Tigranashen portion, which is on the western flank now. Yes, resignation of deputy foreign minister is confirmed. This is after the foreign minister just resigned earlier. Now the deputy foreign minister has resigned. The election campaign finally kicks off in Armenia. We understand the full, what transpired after all, but that was the important election, the election that was going to essentially course correct the country for what needs to come or how the country needs to respond to what happened. We'll cover the results later in a minute. Azerbaijan captures another Armenian soldier. This is now being like a set of soldier capturing in and around the Syunik region. Konstantin Orbelian, a little bit of positivity, was named New York City Opera music director, which is a very high honor to be a conductor in such a position. Human rights defender activists are condemned exploiting POWs issue in toxic elections campaign. So the issues of POW started to emerge, and this is kind of where the root of what we now see with Alan Simonian and later on the rest is when kind of I want to say like the Donald Trump card was used, where the POWs were I think called losers for landing themselves in the hands of the captor, and essentially I believe the ombudsman and the human rights defenders asked, and even foreign human rights entities asked for that to be refrained from election cycles. That should not be part of the campaign. That was that news item. It was the news is pretty toxic. The illegal trials that we just covered in May are continuing in Baku. The U.S. reiterated the need of Azerbaijan to withdraw forces from Armenian border, essentially pull back. And none of that has been done. As David mentioned, the forces are still there. I think we as Armenians need to no longer care when foreign entities make statements. We need to see action rather than statements. 15 POWs returned to Armenia for, I believe that was that high-profile case for in exchange for landmine maps in Artsakh, which, while I'm happy that the POWs were returned, landmines are kind of grantors of safety to the people that live in Artsakh currently.
Right, and finally, it's just disproportionate, right? You give away all that information, you only get 15 POWs back when there's hundreds.
Yeah. Where in reality, no, you do not need to give POWs back for information. By law, you're supposed to just hand them over when war is ended.
Exactly.
Okay? When war is ended.
Exactly.
So, losses. What do you call it? Azerbaijan sentences the Lebanese Armenian Viken Yulekjan to 20 years in prison. This is the Lebanese Armenian man that was just ill and was in the hospital. The person that was essentially, I believe, captured, not because he wandered off, but it was during that time of the capitulation. It was in and around November time when this individual was captured, this Armenian citizen. Human rights defender slams Pashinyan's threats on the campaign trail. This is when we saw Pashinyan kind of bring out the hammer, as in the most noted Mussolini fascist tool, stating that the Velvet Revolution is taking a turn and now is going to be hammered in as the Iron Revolution, stating that, essentially maybe foreshadowing that the revolution is now turning into a less democratic, entity. In Shushi, Erdogan and Aliyev signed an accord. Interesting enough, I believe during the meeting of the two, the accord is to have a military cooperation and essentially later on to establish a Turkish presence in Shushi. I believe in that meeting, a consulate was opened up in Shushi as well, a Turkish consulate to have a permanent presence in Shushi. Yeah. How is that important to us? And next time we'll be capturing Shushi, we'll be booting a Turkish consulate out of there as well.
More sham trials.
Yeah. Well, this is important. The sham trial of the 14 Armenian POWs begin in Azerbaijan, something that should not happen again under the Geneva Convention. Only 49% take part in Armenia's snap parliamentary election. This is a very important thing to remember. Parliamentary elections happen. We know the results. My Step Alliance with Pashinyan wins. A lot of reshuffling in the parliament. Gagik Tsarukyan's party is ousted. Marukyan's party is ousted. The next party that has, I believe, the next two parties that have any kind of semblance of a victory is the Hayastan Dashin, which Kocharan and Dashnak Tutum, as well as the Republican Party also took a little bit of seats in the parliament as well, if I'm not mistaken. But the main point is that essentially the referendum was on the handling of the war, and for the most part, Pashinyan retained his political stronghold barely, but nevertheless still is in the parliament. But it's important to highlight that only 49% of the eligible people to vote voted. So that's a very there's essentially three blocks: the people that are accused of being loyalists to Pashinyan, the folks that came out and turned out that said we need a change, Nahkins or whatever, doesn't matter, and then a very large majority that just did not show up, and so it slightly delegitimizes everything, but unfortunately it's been certified.
Kocharian's group challenged it, and the Central Court upheld the election results.
Okay. Yes, and moving along, Russian troops to be deployed in Gerharkunik, says the Army Chief of Staff. Armenian American Museum commences permanent exhibition schematic and design. This is the Armenian American Museum that's broke ground here in Glendale, California.
Yep.
Let's wrap up. That's it. So then now we are.
Yeah, there was a wrestler that got a gold medal, which was pretty cool. That was cool. And then more legal cases for POWs that were being submitted. But I guess getting into July, Greg, let's see here. The four political forces did ask the Constitutional Court to annul the election results. We know that did not happen. 15 more POWs did return from captivity, but at the same time, 14 more POWs were sentenced in Azerbaijan. So you're still having them sentencing these sham trials, illegal trials of POWs, while they're sending just fractional amounts of them back. It also is of note, the CSTO rejected Yerevan's appeal for help in the Armenian border breach by Azerbaijan. So there you go. That happened in July. We did lose Duduk Virtuoso legend, Jivan Gasparian. We lost him at the age of 93 in July. There was another sham trial of 2 more POWs, which began. Again, there's legal action that's being called for. I mean, Legal Center demanded immediate action by U.S. and Europe regarding the POWs. Let's see here. The EU did pledge $3.1 billion in aid to Armenia. That is more than what the U.S. has offered. I believe the U.S. offered 2.5 million. Well, actually, to Artsakh, they offered 2.5. More government crackdowns on opposition mayors. Again, very anti-democratic from Pashinyan's group. More civilians being killed. Soldiers being killed and civilians being killed by Azeris. Azeris killing Armenian soldiers and civilians. More funding was secured for the Armenian American Museum in Glendale, both at the federal and state level, I believe, which is really, really a positive thing. Looking forward to that being built for us to visit, hopefully do a live show there at some point. 26 more POWs were sentenced in Azeri court. And the government did report that there was 120,000 people living in Artsakh. I wanted to ask Shant to see his thoughts on that, but we can have him back to get his thoughts on that. But the government did release official number of 120,000 people back in Artsakh. There was more fighting. 3 soldiers were killed, Armenian soldiers, 4 injured in an intense Azeri attack on Armenia in July, and more POWs were sentenced. So, Greg, if you want to take us through August as we get wrapping up here. Maybe we just
horrible horrible appointee, an outgoing Armenian ambassador was being reported replaced by Pashinyan's right-hand woman, which is Lili Makuns, the current Armenian ambassador. Armenians Arthur Davtyan wins bronze in the Tokyo Olympics. In 2021, amongst other things, the Olympics happened, whether Japan wanted that or not. And thankfully, an Armenian won a bronze medal and kind of brought a little bit of light to us. I believe a few Armenians from other nations, including Russia, won as well. Lebanon, our community was large there, and the recovery was very slow from that 2020 devastating blast. Remind me, David, it was in August of 2020. Right?
Yeah.
And the reports and the kind of the outcry from the general population, and actually I know AGBU does a lot of work there, is that the recovery is extremely, extremely slow. 2 Armenian soldiers were killed in Azerbaijani attacks. This is amongst many of the attacks that have been happening throughout the month of August. Month of August saw a lot of kind of cross-border skirmishes, including in areas like Arach, and again, on multiple sites of Armenia, both in Syunik, Gerharkunik, and on the Nakhichevan side of things. including the murder of Armenian soldiers as well as the injuring of Armenian soldiers on multiple reports of that happening. This is again at the juxtaposed with the desire to unblock, or whatever the hell you want to call it, the Armenia-Azeri economic relations, with the Minister of the Economy ushering in the move forward that the Pashinyan and My Step Alliance want to implement, and again unblock the economy and integrate it with a falling lira in Turkey as well as a murderous Azerbaijan. Please explain this to me. There is a count that's being made of how many first time ever, because we haven't heard from the official Yerevan say that they're tallying that 3,773 lives were lost in the Artsakh war in the 44 days, which is a very, very staggering number, while 243 remain missing in action.
That was Pashinyan reporting that, but yeah,
it was a Pashinyan
that was,
report.
but the IFS has the numbers, and that does sound about in line with what they're saying. But
absolutely, but you know the report comes months, if almost not a year, after the actual war, and that to me is a little bit understandable. Azerbaijani opened fire at Armenian position near Shushi. We can go into that later.
There were brawls in the parliament.
And we enter September. Let's go for it there.
Yeah, Fly Arna, kind of a strange name. Armenia has a new national airline. That's what it's called, Fly Arna. Another soldier was killed by Armenian soldier was killed, and they tortured an Artsakh farmer, and they continued to set fields on fire in September. So again, more intimidation and terrorizing of people, civilians and soldiers. We did have 2 Armenian soldiers released in September as well. Let's see here. The California State Assembly did pass a resolution to establish a sister state with Syunik. That's a very nice gesture by our home state here. And Syunik needs all the support, as much support as possible. Turkey set up a military command center in Baku, which you just mentioned not that long ago, Greg, about Turkey just building up their presence in and their presence in Artsakh, but also within Azerbaijan. And this is when we started to see Azeris set up checkpoints along the Goris Kapan highway along the eastern border of Armenia. This was the beginning of this, and they set up checkpoints, and they started to levy taxes on truck drivers that are coming through there. So, and they even they stopped 2 truck drivers, Iranian truck drivers on that route.
Latest reports on that story now is that I believe from the month of September till today, they, I believe, raised millions of dollars in levy taxes.
You're right.
So now Azerbaijan is essentially controlling Armenia's commerce, and Armenia is slowly ceasing to become a state. Please.
Yes. More funding was secured, 1.8 million in state funds for the Armenian American Museum. The Azeri police, I mentioned this, arrested 2 Iranian truck drivers. Armenia did assume, we didn't really touch on this over the summer, over the fall even. Armenia did assume CSTO chairmanship. I thought that's interesting. I'm not sure what kind of changes we'll see, if any kind of benefit from that at all. We're not seeing it right now, but Armenia is the chair of the CSTO treaty partnership of nations led by Russia, right, Greg? So moving along here, Azeri soldiers terrorized Armenian children on a bus in Artsakh. And those children are the bravest kids ever in the world. There's video of them, and they're not crying, they're not budging at all by these soldiers, which terrorized them. The September 21 did mark the 30th anniversary of Armenia's independence from the Soviet Union. That is a milestone. We hope that we're able to continue to have Independence Days within Armenia and Artsakh. St. Peter Armenian Church, our dear Armenian Church, part of the Western Diocese, was vandalized in Van Nuys. Greg, I'm sure you've probably been there. I've been there before for ACYO events. years back. Father Syunik is the priest there. That church was vandalized. There, I don't know if there's any updates on that. Like, perhaps we should check into that if there was any kind of rulings about who did it, why, how did it happen, is it a hate crime? I think it was being investigated as a hate crime. And there were dozens of civilians still missing, while over 2,000 monuments are endangered. Artsakh was saying so. Let's go ahead and keep moving.
All right. So we are in the month of November, right? I believe
October. But yeah, let's touch on a couple.
Again, it's been a whirlwind year. Obviously, both here domestically and abroad. It's kind of coming to a climax with this Omicron variant. Actually, something we should have mentioned in September. Again, let's not forget that we are still in a pandemic, and a popular Armenian pop singer, someone that the nation loved, Heiko, died from COVID. Again, COVID being very, very rampant in Armenia, and that's again on the department that is on the Ministry of Health and the the Pashtun administration, because you are at the wheel, and COVID in Armenia is horrible. That we haven't gotten a handle on the pandemic, and it's rampant. In October, Karaki II raises the POW issue with the Pope, seeing that there needs an escalation past Yerevan's dealings with Baku. An Azerbaijani plane flew over Armenia's airspace. Yerevan refuted the concerns from many, saying that, hey, Azeri planes used to always fly before the war, and they should continue flying again. And this was a plane from Azerbaijan into Nakhichevan, crisscrossing above Syunik. Aliyev's 11-year-old son was implicated in a report that he owns 45 million in property in central London. This was on the heel of a major kind of crackdown, a report that came out middle of this year, where the Aliyev regime has multitudes. I think they even called it like the Baku laundromat, where the Aliyev regime has an insane amount of holdings in offshore, banks, and with a lot of ties, unfortunately, to the British Crown as well, where a lot of the property that owned by the Crown was sold to the Aliyev holding. Iran closes routes to Turkish trucks. There was that ramp up, and in Syunik, where essentially Iran was very much at the center of what the checkpoints that were implemented in the southern region of Armenia and Syunik by the Azeri forces. There was even some tensions escalating between Azerbaijan and Iran, enough so that the Iranian army was mobilizing and moved its forces into the north, onto the border with Azerbaijan, something we've never seen happen in decades. Iran transportation link was finally restored between essentially central Armenia, Yerevan, and down into the Mehri border corridor. Let's just kind of keep going.
The Dink family was to receive 1.5 million Turkish lira. Turkish lira, of course, is crashing, but they did receive compensation for Dink's.
Absolutely. Iran, again, stepped up its game, something that both Russia and Iran should have done earlier, but this time Iran's intelligence has said that it has proof of Azerbaijan harboring terrorist groups leading up to the war with Armenia.
And then apparently Baku did remove exhibits of their trophy park from international pressure, I believe. So, but it's still awful thing that. Anyway, go ahead.
There's so much. Again, Azeri continue for shelling Artsakh Armenian positions, injuring 6 soldiers. A landslide of opposition victories kind of rocked Armenia, where large mayorships in large cities all throughout Armenia, the My Step Alliance has lost. As a matter of fact, continuing on to just as much as recently, enough so that my cousin even mentioned that at one point in January, David and I will cover, apparently that there is things going on in Armenia currently, where local governments, including something that recently happened with the mayorship of Yerevan, there's a lot of shakeup that's happening, and we in the diaspora should pay close attention, but we'll report on that. Yeah. But the victories were certified, even so that the mayor of Goris that won that victory out of jail because Pashinyan has jailed the man, get this, without a charge. He was just detained, as we can call that. Okay, again, that ushering in and the downfall of democracy in the quote-unquote Velvet Revolution.
Yeah.
Concerning obviously, the issue of POWs continues. The 5 more POWs were sentenced in Baku. Again, that is illegal. The Iranian truck drivers were released. The 2 that David mentioned were arrested en route to Armenia on Armenian highways.
Yeah.
Concerning report that Moscow wants to work with Baku to rebuild the occupied Artsakh. Again, Russia's been known to kind of flirt with the idea of two-sidism, but I think Moscow understands that Baku is definitely in the hands of Ankara and not Moscow.
Right.
Let's go into November, David.
Yeah, let's do it. Again, more sporadic fire into Artsakh's Martuni region. That's where Shant is, correct? Greg?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we were just speaking to Shant coming from there. Armenia submitted the film Should the Wind Drop for international feature category in the Oscars. We were not shortlisted for the Oscars, but it's obviously important for Armenia to continue to submit their film and to have a participation in cultural milestones like that and the Oscars. There was Azeri forces opened fire near Shushi. 1 civilian was killed, 3 were injured. Again, this is all just last month. Shout out to Genocide Education Project, founded here in the Bay Area. They did open so they're going to host an inaugural teacher fellowship program in Armenia. Let's see here, moving along. Azerbaijan. Yeah, go ahead.
No, go for it.
I was just going to say, Azeris did launch a massive attack on Armenia. Greg, that was the last time we were live, I believe, to report that there was a full-on attack. And Russia did end up mediating a ceasefire. So thankfully, it did not last for much longer than a day or maybe 5-6 hours. But it did happen on November. Let's see here. Looking at the exact date, November 16, I believe. Hold on a second.
Mm-hmm. Where we all thought that this was an escalation into another full-scale war.
Right.
Again, Yerevan's response to it was very tepid at best. And then finally, this is a very damning report that at this point it is now a report that the entire Goris-Khapan stretch of the highway is completely under the Azeri control, essentially severing the southern region of Armenia from Yerevan, except for this one horrendous road that our friend Kyle has been on, which is not at all good for international commerce or anything. It's essentially a winding road through villages.
13 soldiers were captured and 24 were missing after that attack on November 16. I believe some have been repatriated. Some were repatriated and then arrested. Very oddly, the Armenian authorities arresting POWs. Apparently,
a very horrendous story out of Armenia is where the Pashinyan regime essentially, and we're already in November. This is the news from almost yesterday. 2 major cases we saw that soldiers coming back into repatriating from being captive are now being held for questioning under dubious charges, as well as the Speaker of the Parliament, none other than Alan Simonyan, and I don't know, David, if you link that, but it needs to be stated. The same Alan Simonyan that was asked the parliament earlier to purchase him a BMW 7 Series on utilizing the, state funds. He was caught on hidden camera stating that essentially POWs are something of the past in his mind because those people chose to be captive. And it's essentially a non-issue. That definitely rattled some cages, but in my opinion, not enough to kind of outrage the entire nation. This is where we understand that we are being a little bit kind of
this was in early December that this happened, right, Greg? So
alrighty, man.
Very good. So just moving along, almost wrapping up here. We thank everybody for watching and tuning in. Several very loyal viewers tonight. Thank you for sticking with it. Quite a bit of information to cover. But wrapping up November, let's see here. Yerevan did disclose that 6 soldiers were killed during that attack on November 16. Another soldier was killed by Azeris in Gehar Syunik after that. The Pope did award Arach Media, producer of The Promise, an HBU board member as well, and founder of the Promise Institute at UCLA. He was awarded the Benemerenti Medal by the Pope, which is it's a wonderful accomplishment by him and for our people. And then over 12 million was raised by the Armenia Fund Telethon on Thanksgiving weekend, which, by the way, it was shorter this year, and I don't think it was available on television necessarily the full time, which was kind of odd. But go ahead, Greg. You want to take
the meeting? We're not done, unfortunately, with November. The meeting between Pashinyan and Putin in Sochi resulted with a trilateral statement stating that everything that we started doing in the November Accord of 2020 will continue. Just want to highlight Pashinyan's face here. He seems like a good puppet boy. Sorry. That is concerning because everything that we know about those 9 points are damaging to the survival of the country. Going into Yerevan again insists that there will be no corridor over Syunik, but we all understand that anything Yerevan says at this point cannot be believed because everything that they actually do is to notice how fast Yerevan releases every POW that's Azeri. We did capture 2 POWs in that skirmish, and they were immediately released without anything. Again, December starts with Azerbaijani forces opening fire on Artsakh Martuni, Martuni being exactly the area where our guest from today, this is Kai's connection between, what we do and what we see and the actual people on the ground. This is where Shant lives, the Shant from, an hour ago. OSCE Forum Yerevan highlights Azerbaijan's aggression and invasion of Armenia. Azerbaijan forces capture and kill 65-year-old Artsakh resident. That is already, I believe, 5th civilian that's being killed in Artsakh just this year. Numerous Armenian soldiers died in 2021 in the relative time of peace. A major supporter of the Armenian cause passed away, Senator Bob Dole, somebody that was very instrumental in Ronald Reagan pushing the acknowledgement of the Armenian genocide recognition in the 80s. Azerbaijan again returns 10 captured soldiers, some of which were then arrested by the Armenian government. Aliyev again threatens to forcibly open the Syunik corridor, responding to Yerevan's statement that the corridor is not going to happen.
We touched on the speaker's remarks, but then
we should touch upon it. We should do a whole episode on it. after meeting with Putin, Pashinyan, and Pashinyan, might as well be Pashinyan and Aliyev meet now with France's Macron in France. Human rights defender, the one that will no longer be a human rights defender in
February.
In February, questions the legality of detaining the returned Armenian POWs. These are POWs that fought in the war and are now being detained by Yerevan. Okay.
Yeah, I believe that's in this November 16 thing, right?
Yeah.
November 16.
And the rapprochement or the continuation of the essentially establishing relationships, official relations between Yerevan and Armenia are now underway, and they're slowly kind of gaining traction, where Turkey immediately, it's essentially like they're explaining to us how they want to do this. They appoint a special envoy, a special representative to start the conversation of normalizing ties between Yerevan and Ankara. And that envoy is a stellar and a well-known Armenian genocide denier, while Armenia rebuttals it with naming Ruben Hubinyan, essentially a street protester that is, someone that was pro-My Step Alliance, a relative nobody, just like everybody else in this godforsaken cabinet. I'm sorry, David.
Yeah.
Then, obviously, one of the biggest stories out of Armenia recently, besides the one that we just heard a few days ago, where Prime Minister Pashinyan essentially says that Artsakh's determination of the territory of Artsakh needs to be determined within the frameworks of the Republic of Azerbaijan. And in that interview, you also hear him say that we must repopulate Artsakh with the so-called displaced people of Azeri origin. If our blood doesn't boil now, I don't know what will. But again, we will try to kind of usher in some sort of a reawakening, because this is even too much for me to read. A major item happened in Yerevan. The mayor of Yerevan, a big supporter of the Velvet Revolution, I believe his name is Heiko. He was a former comedian. He was suddenly ousted in snap elections, and he was being accused of being a little bit too close to, or having secret conversations with the opposition. Again, one can reiterate to those that don't know, I do believe that you can hold a position in the government, and have conversations with any citizen, although he denies it, and not be essentially witch trialed out of your mayoralship, which was done very swiftly and very fast. They ousted him, and they placed, and again, like I said, when this happened, I posted on Instagram, I said, the revolution is starting to eat his own children. Of course, I was being a little bit comedic about it, but what that means is this guy was a big supporter of Pashinyan. And while I do not lose any sleep over him losing his mayoralship, it is just telling where this administration is headed.
Yeah.
That is the largest piece that we have. It's a lot, dude. It's a lot. For those of you that are still with us, David and I set out to kind of do this. We wanted to start off with an amazing guest, and I believe we did that.
We did.
Tomorrow is New Year's Eve. 2021 was a heavy one, less heavy than 2020.
Yeah,
but
no.
Reflecting on it, I just don't know what to say.
It appears that there were 15 more POWs repatriated this month, and then of course we saw this coming, right, Greg? And then let's wrap that the Ankara, Turkey, wants the Armenian genocide issue to be left to historians. Of course, the historians have spoken already. It is historical fact, but they want to be left to historians.
Biden has spoken already.
Ahead of
Char Charfjian came to the diaspora with the protocols where that was one of the tickets of the normalization of the ties, and then immediately went back to Yerevan saying that unfortunately this is a non-starter and we cannot have these, we cannot agree to this. I do not believe that Pashinyan will even question what the diaspora wants in regards to the Armenian genocide issue. A man that's openly saying that Artsakh needs to be resolved within the framework of the Azerbaijani territorial integrity. I don't even understand the words that are coming out of my mouth. It's insane.
Very concerning. Will be all concerning, but we're gonna keep following it. And thank you to everybody that's been watching. Greg, thank you. And by the way, one shout out to, let's give ourselves a shout out if that's okay. Arach Media turned 5 in 2021. So in July 2021, Arach Media turned 5. So that's positive. Some positive for us.
That is positive, David. We're gonna revamp. We miss our friend Richard. He took a little bit of a timeout this holiday season. We will see him back in 2022. I just want to say thank you to everybody that's tuning in. I know this has been a lengthy one, but we kind of set out to do this as a way to recap what's transpired in 2021. I'm sure we missed out a lot of items, but the big ticket items we covered. It was an interesting year. I wish everyone a happier 2022. Please be safe out there. There's an insanity of a whirlwind of Omicron variants flying around the place.
Just be safe.
We in the diaspora have the responsibility, as Shant said, and Shant agreed with me and David. We need to bring in that next level of the
energy and drive and
the drive into saving Artsakh and securing Armenia's future. And those are diasporans that were the never former people and the I will be with Pashinyan forever and ever. The man says Artsakh is no longer Armenian, essentially. What do you say to that, and why are you saying it? That is my question to them.
Right. Yeah. Well,
say something good, dude. Let's finish with a Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. Stick with us for the 12 days of positivity leading up to Armenian Christmas. Merry Christmas to all of our Armenian friends and family that celebrate Armenian Christmas on January 6th, and Happy New Year to everyone. Thank you for watching. There are positive things that are still happening, and we're going to bring you the news every which way that it comes from Armenia and Artsakh and around the world and our own community. So, everyone.
And as I wrap as well, I want to thank Richard, and I want to thank you, David.
Likewise.
And I want to kind of leave everybody with this piece of information. While there isn't a concerted, unified effort to course correct in Armenia, there are grassroots items that are starting to develop here and there, mayoral, local elections, right? So you might ask, what can I do in the diaspora? Support those efforts, voice your concerns to every organization that you are in. And while me and David are not in every organization, the few organizations we're in, we can definitely enact that change of saying that what's happening in Armenia is not okay. And we need to course correct. We need to voice so as a minimum, voice your opinion, voice your concern to the people that are in your direct circles, to the organizations that you are adhering to, whether it be a church, whether it be ANCA, Armenian Assembly, whatever you belong to, let them know that you are not okay with what's going on. I see way too many diasporans not knowing what to do. And what you can do is local, small, and when we all start, look at what Shant is doing in Artsakh. He is just the one person, and he's kind of lifting. What he's doing is breathing a hope to a land that seemingly is starting to be forgotten by Yerevan. And you can do the same by saying that that is not okay with you. We have 2 minutes until 11:30. We're not going to go past 11:30. I wish you a Happy New Year. I wish everybody health and happiness and success, and prosperous Artsakh, Syunik, and Armenia.
Well said. Happy New Year, everyone. Merry Christmas. Good night.
Good night.